Hello everyone. I hope everyone had a wonderful week. Um, just making sure that this is going to the appropriate places. Sometimes I catch it in time, other times I don't. So, oh jeez, it's not going to work with me well today. Oh, okay, this is going to go up, and then the other one. Okay, so how did everyone's week go? Mine went like this. So I had a incident with my car. I thought I was a genius, leaving work super duper early, like prepped, ready, in the car, got all my cleaning equipment. I thought like a genius. I had got there at 6:30 in the morning, 2 hours earlier than what I normally do, because there is a deadline on getting this house clean. And I thought, I've definitely got it. Everything's going great. I get to 5 minutes to work, and then I realize the car's overheating. It's 6:30 in the morning. I can't call my husband, which is something I think most women do. Everything starts to go south pretty quickly, and you're like, I'm going to be calling you because now it's gone bad. So I did. I broke the rule and I called. And I was like, hey, honey, no, it looks like it's on fire. I didn't know I still had that candle blowing. And so I called him, and this is where it gets super interesting. He's like, no, it's done this to me once before. I don't know what's wrong with it. So I think something's wrong with the radiator, or the water pump that goes to the radiator. And don't take my word for it, they're his. So no, I'm not a mechanic, and no, I can't fix things. I can clean things, but I can't fix things. I can cook very, very basic, like hand me a can of spaghetti. Sure, I'll make it. No, I'm a little bit more advanced than that, but not by much. What I do is in every meal, I will put in the center of my table, in big bowls, whatever we're eating, because I don't do the whole presentation thing. I'm not very good at it. And I figure everyone gets what they can eat. And that generally works. And that way they get everything that they want on their plate. Crazy, right? Anyway, after all of that, this week we have got DUTTON has absolutely no idea what government does, what programs are there, how long. I don't know. More than a little bit pathetic. Parents Next is gone. We're going to talk about the program, what it did, and how it's been abolished. We're going to talk about interest rates. And there's a couple of people I want you to hear from on that. Hate won over kids getting read books. Pauline Hanson is getting sued. And what happens when you ask for a voice? Well, turns out the Liberal Party is still pretty racist. Stuart Roberts, is he out the door? Moria Deeming, is she suing over her expulsion? ALP net zero. Kevin Rudd met the president. The Q&A on King Charles. And then the Fox ratings, what you need to know and what it's projected to look like. So let's kick off the show. Dutton has no idea what he's doing. there are programs that were inbuilt by like Howard era things that he really, really did play a role in. To be presumptuous and not know what's there. And then, given that they haven't even been out of government that long, you would think that he'd have more of an understanding on what this is. Apparently not. So he was asked a basic question about work for the dole. He has zero idea that not only does this still exist, but what it does. Work for the dole was implemented, and it was designed to make people, it was meant to give people experience to get a job, to get opportunities, and really what it turned into was government gets free work, slave labor, and there's really no incentive for any place to hire you above that, because all they have to do is tell you that your work for the dole program is over, and then that they just get in a new lot. That's how it essentially worked as a model. They had to try and find a way to get free work out of people. This is a brilliant way that they concocted to be very cruel to low socioeconomic people. So listen to Jim Chalmers talk about how very incredibly dense Peter Dutton is.
Now, I see today that Peter Dutton says that we should bring back work for the dole, which I suspect might have been what's prompted your question. I think it's troubling that Peter Dutton doesn't know that work for the dole is still in operation. We did not abolish work for the dole. There are people on the work for the dole program right now. It beggars belief, frankly, that his one big contribution to this whole conversation is to bring back a program that hasn't been abolished. Now, I see today that Peter Dutton says that...
That's a good point. That they don't even know what they're calling for anymore. They're just so busy saying no to everything. They don't even know what they're saying no to, which is really, really disturbing. But then there is other programs that you ask them simple questions about, and they're like, I don't know. I don't know where it came from. That's really disturbing, because I'm intellectually curious and I would want to know what these programs did. I would even go one step further and ask Dutton, what did work for the dole do? If he went with, oh, well, it was meant to give people jobs. That was the original incentive, but what ended up happening is that people would just get these work for the dole people, and instead of hiring them, they could just get a whole new lot of workers that would do it for free. This essentially turned into a form of slave labor. Very unhelpful. So, yeah, not a great look. Next, we're going to talk about Parents Next. This is a very similar program to work for the dole. Just to add a little spice to it, was for single parents. And you had to do these arbitrary things, with the kids, and you had to prove that you were entering certain programs, and then you had to, try and get a job in the middle of all that, and it was punishing people that didn't go to these things. Essentially, it was mostly single mothers that were affected by this Parents Next program. So take a listen to this question.
To ask both of you on the entrenched disadvantage, is this an indication that the Workforce Australia formerly job active model has failed? And could the investments in place-based initiatives and long-term unemployment replace paying private providers to hound job seekers to tick boxes and jump through hoops?
Well, we are motivated by the sense here that we can do a much better job of putting the opportunities of a growing job-creating economy within the reach of more people. And part of that is how we do job active and how we do employment services. This is an important part of our plan. There will be other elements on Tuesday night, but the work on employment services which is being done really well by Julian Hill and other colleagues at the committee level and by Tony Burke at the ministerial level. We do anticipate having more to say about that later this year at the conclusion of the committee process, and also in the course of putting together the employment white paper which the Treasury is leading, but working with a bunch of other ministers as well. So we do see that as part of the story here. You shouldn't anticipate big changes in the budget on Tuesday night when it comes to employment services, but we have been working a lot behind the scenes and around the clock, Julian, Tony and others, to see if we can do this much better. Amanda?
So that's an indication and a nod to getting rid of Parents Next, but not to the Work to the Dole program, because loads of workers get mad about this kind of thing, and it's difficult. The polling's been done on this. If they abolished it, it doesn't bode well. So even though I think it's a cruel way of getting slave labour, in the job industry, they see it as, well, at least they're working for whatever pittance, no survival rate that you could get works. And a lot of strong polling supports it, which is insane. So they can't just cut it. It's not viable to do yet. There needs to be a lot of community engagement to change the idea around that program. You get a Conservative government long enough and they'll convince you to chop off your own arm and then tell you how great it was that you did it. That's essentially what's happening here in this space. So Labor needs to do a lot of work to unwind that kind of thing, but it's good to see that Parents Next is gone. Okay, next we're going to talk interest rates. So interest rates just got up to the 10th interest rate hike in 3 years. What motivated this, according to Philip Lowe, the Reserve Bank board member, he claimed that this will be the instrument that will eventually get down interest rates, get down inflation, with zero evidence of that actually happening. What ends up happening is big corporations can make a lot of money. It's like a short sale. If you watch stocks, you realize that they squeeze the market till it pops. And it's essentially a legal way of squeezing all the low social economics so they can bleed it dry, because it's not you or most of the community that created this inflation. It was corporations. But they're not done tapping out. And what Philip Lowe has done was made sure that they could keep getting more money and making record profits and then blaming you for it. So that's how they're gonna spin it. Doesn't matter what the reality is, that's what's happening. So take a listen to Philip Lowe trying to defend this shit show of a situation. Okay.
Governor, I'd rather be me than you. I've been around a long time and I lived through inflation through the 1980s. For those who don't know me, I'm the president of the Pastors and Raisers Association. I represent a very large group of people that are involved in export. What happened then just about ruined regional Australia. It hasn't recovered from the inflation at that point. But you seem relatively happy about the 7%. It needs to come down, but not hurry, take as long as you like. If we had 3 years of 7%, that's 20% gone. And that's our margin. It's all over. There is not enough room in our industry to sustain that level of inflation. Now, the situation we find ourselves in now is not an accident. This was caused by a federal government that borrowed a staggering amount of money, threw it into the economy, and overstimulated that economy. You can see this coming. Blind Freddie could see this coming from miles away. So the question I'd like to ask you, I'm an exporter, and we have covered this ground before. Do you have on your board, not the big mining companies, but the little guy who has to produce a product and compete against Brazil, Argentina, USA, Canada? Do you have someone with hands-on experience of running a small business that can give you the real heads up of what's happening in our industry? And the other one, small business is the biggest business in Australia, and you said to me earlier on this evening, you don't have anybody from small business. These are the people that actually have to engage someone, work out their super, their workers' compensation, their tax. This is a massive industry, and you said you don't have anyone there. You need to have on the board some real people that are doing real things and wearing the brunt of decisions that I think you and the board, in many cases, are very isolated from actually being involved in. Thank you.
Well, we have 9 people, 9 dedicated and distinguished Australians on the board trying to make decisions in our collective interest. So that's just 9, but we have a very extensive liaison program, and Aaron Walker, our representative here in Perth, talks to businesses in Perth on a regular basis, and anyone who is not talking to Aaron and his team already, encourage you to go and get his card and talk to him. So we reach out through lots of different mechanisms, including through Aaron and his team, and each month they write a report for us, and that feeds up into the board. But the board members, I think this is an important point, are not there to represent sectional interests in Australia. They're there to represent the 26 million people who are lucky enough to live here, and they do that with distinction.
Now, what he's doing is very disingenuous to pretend like he's has an interest in everybody's best interest. If that was the case, he would point to the actual problem and then go, no, corporate tax really needs to be dealt with. And then say, you really, really want to bring this down. Corporate profits are also a major big issue here. Why wouldn't he address that if he's really representing 26 million people? And then he wants to say that he doesn't represent these people in that very small factional thing. Sure, I hand him the fact that, these are very small factions, hard to get into. But in truth, he's not really representing anyone but big corporations. This is why when his contract comes up, he's got to go. He cannot stay in the position that he's in.
And we draw on Aaron and his colleagues in our state offices to touch into business on a regular basis.
Well, I'm suggesting you talk to the real job creators.
Thanks, Jim.
Governor.
It's disheartening to see that it's treated just like another questioner rather than a real damn problem. No, they didn't overstimulate the economy. What ended up happening is during the COVID-19 issues, the economy was already in trouble. If you remember, even just before the COVID-19 hit, they were saying, hey, we might hit a recession. There's going to be some really bumpy roads because the federal government was no good without money. That's just a fact. If you want to talk facts, that's where it sits. Then when that happened, they did what they do, a legal squeeze. They made sure all the when just as COVID-19 was just coming out of lockdown, they were saying, oh, there's no supply, there's no this, there's no that. When in truth, in the middle of the floods and the fires, there was a small dip, very small. But all of that has been basically restored almost. And you can't explain the level of pricing that you're at now. Now, there's also the fact on rents and housing. Given the fact that we are nowhere near the numbers of where we were before, how can they justify having rents up that high? For instance, everyone fled when COVID-19 happened. And most tourists were gone. There was no drop in rent. There was no giving people a hand, really. It was like the federal government allowed for a small rent freeze. But what they failed to tell you that, yeah, there was a small rent freeze, but never once did they stop rent from having to be paid. You would have to pay it eventually. And that's how the rent freeze worked. You had to pay the piper eventually. That was the horribleness of what that rent freeze did. So in that moment, we know for a fact that things weren't going great. Then we come out of the COVID-19 lockdowns, and the government was taking away stimulus. Not only were they doing that, but they were doing things like making it harder for people that were dealing with real crises to get real assistance. And that was squeezing everybody. And the profits were huge, huge, huge. Corporations were making a killing at that same time. Productivity was way high too. And they never met the productivity with the rate of wage. And essentially, you were squeezing that poor middle worker till they were broke, till they couldn't even afford to drive to the supermarket that you needed them to rock up at. And you always hear about supermarkets that have underpaid people. You never ever hear about them overpaying people. That'd be a weird flip of the switch. They've always underpaid people. They've never paid them more than what they should have. Which is another disgraceful part of this industry. So there's that. All right, on to our next one. Turns out Monash in Victoria had a drag queen story time. Turns out, oh, hold on. I think I had to play, yeah, there were, from our last story, a little bit. Yep. Dan Andrews on that very quickly. I knew I was forgetting something, and there it is.
Effective against the interest rates. I'm not sure that these interest rate rises are smashing inflation. I am absolutely certain that these interest rate rises are smashing families, and that's a real concern to me. Pulling this lever, and I don't know that it's necessarily effective against the problem they're trying to solve. And they might well be creating lots of, in fact, I'm certain they're creating lots of other problems. Many families are under enormous pressure at the moment. You know, they borrowed in good faith with the expectation from no less an authority than the Reserve Bank that interest rates would not be going up. They now have gone up 11 times in 12 months.
Now that's devastating.
I'm not sure that these...
That's a sign that, you know, we're in a real bad position with all of that. And I think that that's going to need to come down, and this blunt instrument that they're using isn't working. All right, next one. Monash University created a drag queen story time, and it was sold out, and it was very popular, and no harm has ever come to children with this drag queen story time. This was essentially, you ever go to a play, and this was like a play for kids. They would do the funny little voices. They would, you know, do a little bit of play acting. I mean, if you've ever been to the theatre, you know that there's a lot of dress up and exceptionalism in that. And you know that drag queen story time has never harmed anyone. Well, it turns out the people that were doing harm were not the ones reading the books. They were the ones threatening violence. So they got their way, and they threatened violence against no less than parents that were going to present their children to a drag queen story time reading. Now, I have no idea who thought that this shit idea was going to turn out fucking excellent, because it didn't. And the only thing that you did was harm children, that we're going to see a few people dress up and read a book to some kids. That's it. That's all you did. Now, if you want to be children about it, sit down and listen to a book and let your kid hear a story that's fun and vibrant and doesn't harm them at all. But sure, we'll go with your idiocy in that. Okay, so Dan Andrews spoke about that as well. Okay.
Speaker, I'm saddened to have to rise to make a statement to the House in relation to quite shameful conduct out of the City of Monash last week, and decisions that, very sadly, the CEO and the Mayor of that council have had to make in relation to cancelling a number of events that are about celebrating diversity, events that are about sending a message to often some of the most vulnerable people in our Victorian community, that they are loved, they are respected, they are safe, and they are supported by their government and their community. Now, I make this statement not just as the Premier of a state where equality is not negotiable. I also make this statement as a long-time ratepayer in the City of Monash. I don't know how many of these protesters, with not an exercise of free speech, but an exercise in hate speech, violence, bigotry, racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, the list goes on, ugly scenes on any measure, including, can I say, death threats against council officers and councillors. It is a disgrace. It is a disgrace. It's shameful. And my message to those people is very clearly, if you want to behave like the worst elements of the Floridian Republican Party, well, get to Florida. Head over there, where your hateful views might be worth something. They're worth nothing here. We won't stand for this sort of ugly behaviour. It's appalling. And I again make the point, it's not about free speech. This is hate speech, plain and simple. Plain and simple. It is wrong. It is out of step with the values of fair-minded, decent, mainstream Victorians. It is on the fringe. But enough about those people. Let's send the clearest message, Speaker, that equality is not negotiable. And despite the carry-on and the shameful behaviour of a small few, this government and this community remains committed to every single Victorian, no matter who they are or who they love.
So let's address that piece by piece. I've always told people that there is a difference between hate speech and free speech. Like Dean Andrews just addressed, I have said this many, many times myself, to loved ones no less. And that's what makes this an even more devastating piece of diatribe. I understand fully what they were doing. I got it. Dean Andrews addressed it in the most civil way he could. And I've said this before. You weren't protecting no kids. You were copying Americans because you're stupid. That's all you did. That's all these people did, was copied Americans because they got no original ideas and they thought ruining a kid's story time was the hit thing to do. Congrats, idiots. You know, all you did was made sure the children didn't see diversity. That's all you did. You weren't protecting them. That was the dumbest idea that I've ever heard. So when I tell you this, there is a difference between hate speech and free speech. Absolutely there is. There is not a question in my mind that that is a true statement. How do I know that? Because I have read 18C. If you haven't read 18C and understood the law of the land, we are not American. We are Australian. And in our laws, we have laws that specifically states that there is a difference between hate speech and free speech. What they did was hate. And they hated something that they didn't understand because they listened to the Yanks. And like Dean Andrews pointed out, I don't even know if they're ratepayers of that city. I don't know if they just sort of rocked up, copied a few Americans, and trashed a board meeting into that. It's just another shameful moment where Americans need to calm it all down over there and not bring their bull crap here. They talk about other cultures bringing their crap out of the places. Let me tell you how disgusting the American anti-vaccine, hateful freaking rhetoric around gay and trans communities. And don't even get me started that they've even started the whole election claims here. You have the bossy running around, telling everybody about how he believes that the election was stolen, because they're not just one rabbit hole kind of people. They're going to pluck from a few. And here's the thing, it always will be trampled here. There is no room for that crap here. Dean Andrews is right, and we need to tell him it is not an acceptable part of our community. And I will not be calm, and I will not be quiet while hate is able to breed in such a subhuman kind of way, and people go, oh, well, don't you believe in the free speech? No, I believe in limitations to the crap you get away with saying, because if you don't, people get hurt. Do you know that it takes more than actual physical violence to harm someone? That's why there's a difference between a verbal abuse and physical abuse. That's why the very thing that can come out of your mouth can harm those kids you're supposedly protecting. We know for a fact that this is just a no policy idea, hard right diatribe that they're trying to pawn off as a policy. But here's the reality. We're going to level it right now, right here. They can't win this. We are bigger, stronger, and better. This country is red for Labor for a reason, not just on every state, but federally too. That means we are bigger. We know better. They know that what they did is wrong. So they can have their weird squabbles about the election and vaccines and drag queen story time and women's rights, but they're a minority. So let's make them feel like they are the little peasants that they are in carrying on about ridiculous things that don't even make sense. It would help if some of their stuff connected to something real. Like, dude, do you know that we do not have, I've had to correct this of Australians, we do not have Dominion or Smartmatic here. Are you aware of that? Like, when you're going to say something about Australian election integrity, do not bring up Dominion or Smartmatic like they're here. They are not here. They are not Australian companies. And no, they are not Hugo Chavez, in Venezuela. What is wrong with you people? Stop it. Whatever you are thinking of this project, stop it. It's ridiculous. Hugo Chavez died like 8 years ago. He's not a ghost resurrected to ruin a 2020 election or any future elections. He's dead as a doornail. It's not going to change. You are not going to get this resurrection of that. And if you want to tell kids what stories they can listen to, and you want to go on with your weird book bans, how about you start with the original sin of introducing religion to children, where there is a burning bush and priests abusing children. That's the real harmful side of things. Now, that's not every church, but sure, you want to go protest something, go protest that, because that is a very real issue. I mean, you can't, you really, really can't. You can't make up this fabricated idea of something that hasn't happened. Drag Queen Storytime has never hurt anyone. I don't know if they know this, but while they were celebrating Barry Humphrey's death, do they know that that was a man dressing up in women's clothing? Like, do they understand that? And that was part of our Australian culture to celebrate him. So if they want to be anti-drag queen story time, but at the same time be okay with Barry Humphries, that really says how terrible you are. Keep in mind too, I was very small watching Barry Humphries play Dame Edna and Sir Les Patterson. I'm only 40, so for me it was ingrained into my childhood. Normal. No one ever screamed about it. I went to gay Mardi Gras parades. My uncle used to encourage this kind of stuff because he's great with my mum. I have this family that was able to do this. We can do this. You know what we can't do? Deal with the idiots that have got these Florida type of thinking. Okay, on to the next one. Turns out Pauline Hanson is being sued. Turns out that a Green senator has taken umbrage with her words. Finally, everything that she says and does is now catching up with her. And her literal speeches of go back to where you came from kind of crap is finally eating her up. Okay, Greens Deputy Leader Maureen Faruqi is suing One Nation leader Pauline Hanson over allegedly racist. No, it's not allegedly. She literally did the thing that you're claiming. Calling her on the senator to piss off back where she came from in Pakistan, because that seems entirely appropriate. Look, I get it. It's how she operates. This is her moneymaker. This is what she does. She just needs to say the most ridiculous thing. But you can't harm people in the community to do that. Okay. Faruqi launched a federal court action against a veteran Queensland senator on Wednesday, accusing her of breaching Code 18C. Now, like we discussed earlier, hate is a crime. You can't do that. So if you want to tweet out hate and you want to do it in the position of a parliamentarian where you have a massive following of people, sure, but understand that there are physical consequences to that. Like, I get to sue you because we have hate laws. There's no absolutism here because we're smarter than the Americans. We were smart enough to go, no, you can't just say whatever you want. There's got to be bloody consequences. Because Americans don't think consequences should exist. Like any consequences like, I don't know, gun control or anything like that. They don't think that they can fix things. They just leave things as awful as they are. Okay. The Racial Discrimination Act that makes it unlawful to commit an act likely to offend, insult, humiliate, intimidate someone with a race-based comment. Okay, basically she's been told that she has to pay $150,000 to the nearest charity. You have to keep in mind to a charity of her choosing. All right. She's been told to undergo sensitivity training, which I think she'll fail, and I think that she's already undergone. And then she's been told there's more in her statement. There was more to it than just that. And this is because Maureen Faruqi wrote a tweet saying, why should I mourn the Queen? The Queen that did not support, it was a colonialist system. It had slavery and a whole bunch of other things. So this Green senator actually pointed out facts, and Pauline Hanson was like, oh, well, you don't have to be here kind of thing. Told her to piss off and go back to wherever she came from, which is disgusting behavior for a senator, for starters. Who would vote for someone who'd speak to someone like that? That's awful. There's a first issue. Second issue is that I don't think anyone should talk to anyone else like that. It's disgusting. So there's that. Okay. So it turns out this week, as we're talking racial issues, there was a conference in the Liberal Party about the voice. Tony Abbott took it upon himself to, again, inform us of his great suppository of wisdom of how he thinks the voice is not going to be a good idea. Because, like what he said, when the carbon tax was taken out, well, the thing that they called it was a carbon emission trading scheme. He said that the women would be thankful because they do the ironing. Or what about the time when he just thought that he could shirt front at the Russian president? He's an idiot. Why are we listening to an idiot? And Joe Hildebrand, another idiot. But that's not the ridiculous part I want to touch on. I want to touch on the part where they were physically asked. Okay. 3 white people were asked at a Liberal Party conference, hey, can we listen to a First Nations people about the voice that where you're trying to that is trying to be implemented here? And they're like, well, we don't have time for that. Yeah. This is who they are. This is who they want to be. They are racist to the core. They don't care. We're the only nation that does first world nation that does not have a treaty with its original people. Keep that in mind as you're seeing that. So we do not have a treaty that states that with our First Nations people about equitable treatment and that sort of thing. There's no reason for that other than we're just a terrible country when it deals with our First Nations people. I would rather that we talk to them, not about them. I would rather we ask them questions and make time to ask them these questions. That's what the voice will do. They are very clear that they don't want to hear from them. They couldn't even willow Jacinta Price for this. Why? Because even Jacinta Price was not good enough to be heard on this. And as much as I'm pained to say it, I don't like the woman because she's really going against her own in doing what she's doing. But sure, you want to do it. But that would have been a halfway concession. They could have got Noel Pearson or anybody. But they didn't. They could have got Warren Mundine, the big profiteer of, getting conservative money to say disgraceful things about the First Nations people. But they weren't even creative enough to do that. Because why? They're awful. They're awful. As a group, they're just an awful party. All right. Stuart Roberts, is he going? Turns out, I'm just having technical issues. Stuart Roberts has the seat of Fadden. Now, he's had his own controversies, including he and his wife in a Rolex watch, where he told the parliament that he thought that the Chinese would give him fake Rolex watches, because that's what a Chinese government would do. They'd give you fake Rolex watches, never handed them back or anything. But sure, tell us again about how, or when he billed them for an internet bill for a ridiculous amount every month to spin his hate-filled Christianity stuff. And no, this isn't like a normal Christian where they're saying nice and peace and love. He was sending out anti-abortion and crap that he has no business mucking around in to people. He was helping Lyle Sheldon with his disgustingness. He and his mother. He's also one of the architects behind RoboDebt, along with Scott Morrison. And he knows that he's close to getting looked at by the NAAC, the National Accountability Commission. And that'll look at corruption, which is another reason that he's going to step down. So then, as you build the blocks, you realize that he's leaving because he's a scumbag, and then he'll use a cloak of, well, I'm a good Christian kind of guy. I hate these type of people because there's genuine nice Christians out there, and this guy doesn't fit the bill. I know some actual nice Christians, and he uses it like a badge, a shield to hide how grotesque of a human that he is. And he knew what he was doing with RoboDebt. He knew that the legal advice did not support the implementation of RoboDebt. He's scared. And he knows that they made a lot of money off those sorts of rorts, and there was a lot of people with their hand in their pockets ripping off the low socioeconomic people. That's just part of the reality. Alrighty. Oh, that was really loud and in my freaking ear. Okay, so next one. This comes off the back of last week, us talking about Scott Morrison. He could be getting a job in the UK. Turns out that they have these like weird little setups for when they leave Parliament that they can just sort of grab jobs. You or I can't do that. We can't work in our current jobs just to line up another job, but they sort of think they can. Okay. Is MORIA deeming suing? Turns out Moira Deeming, she is a TERF. If you don't know what a TERF is, it's one of these women that pretends like being biologically born a woman is better than being a trans woman. Well, no, none of that crap is true. And here's why none of that's true. And she cavorted with neo-Nazis. Yes, she openly used the neo-Nazis' banners of hate along with others. And they all shook hands and acted like they were best buddies. Turns out that even this is too far for the Liberal Party. Then she said, fine, I'll sue you. And now she's saying, well, I didn't say I'd sue you. I never once considered suing, despite her saying that she was going to sue. This is how they are. They're like vipers. They eat their own. You know, they don't. It's horrible. And she's hateful. You know, like I can tell you now. I can't picture why we need women like this around to be in a political space. There's no room for her. I think that she will do a lot of harm if she ever won. And I'm glad in the last federal election she lost and lost handily. So whether she does sue or not, she now looks like she's going to be permanently expelled for her behavior. So we'll see what happens. She previously said that she would commence legal proceedings unless a leader, John Prosciutto, met a deadline to declare that she was not a Nazi sympathizer. Yeah, you couldn't just tell people, no, I do not support Nazis. That was a little bit too hard for you, Moira. I wonder why they just sort of went, nah, you've got to expel her from the party for that. Because, you know, even the Liberal Party has to go, yeah, okay, there's our line. I yield. Because they're sick of being smashed. They know that each time they get to a election day and they're like, hey, no, isn't this the party that's okay with Nazis? And then they're like, yeah, it seems like it. So they're not going to vote for him, are they? You know, it's disgusting. Alrighty. Turns out Labor has another plan for net zero. And it's winning back workers in that plan. And in that, it's rejecting coal mines along the way and doing things that are environmentally friendly. That absolutely show the very best of us. Okay, Labor's Net Zero Authority wins backing after workers call for help to leave fossil fuel industry. Now, this comes on the back of Liddell closing. Liddell is building a very green kind of space. They no longer see the power in coal like they once did. Now, this is a transitional period. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and everything's going to be net zero. No, this takes time. You can't just rip out infrastructure and then go, well, you know, you have no power. What are you going to do? No, because you need to keep supply going. So what ends up happening is that they have to go green, not just for the environment's sake, but because it's cheaper. And they know it's cheaper. And this is where industry is more progressive than the actual government, because they're bold enough to do what government can't. So eventually they're like, well, now we know we got a Labor government. We know that they're going to support this. So we're in. So in saying that, Industry groups and unions have welcomed the Albanese government's creation of a net zero authority amid filling the economic hole left by the closure of fossil fuel mines and power stations. The government on Friday confirmed reports that it would set up the authority to promote an orderly, positive economic transformation, resulting in the shift of carbon-polluting industries. So Labor sees it as a winning margin as well. It's not just better for the environment, it's better for the economy too. There's a lot of money to be made in the green industry too. So keep that in mind as you're viewing this. So view it through the lens of they're not just saving the planet, they're saving money. So it's smart. I think it is anyway. All righty. So it turns out Kevin Rudd met the president. And great to have presented the credentials to the President. Biden just got the happy snaps back. President firing on all cylinders as he was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And Therese looks stunning. That's his wife, Kevin Rudd's wife, Therese. So he is now ambassador to the US, which I think is a wonderful idea. He knows diplomacy. And I think in relation to how Penny Wong can bolster that because she's very good at this kind of thing. And we know that he wants to do something that is very good. He talks about freeing Julian Assange, which in itself I think is a wonderful idea. So I'm hoping he can tip the president's ear and the UK governments, and there can be some kind of agreement to get Julian Assange home. I really think it was strategic for Albo to put him there and then to go, hey, yeah, you know that thing with Julian Assange? Let's bring that to a close. But meanwhile, keep in mind at this president's dinner, as Kevin Rudd points out, this state's dinner, he was talking about a American that was locked up in Russia in the last month for doing journalism. Imagine how us Australians, as we're listening to him gloating about how he's going to get this person from Russia back for reporting on news, but not interested in giving us Julian Assange back. That to me is crazy. But that's me. All righty. So Q&A on King Charles. Now, what people don't know is that the King Charles coronation happened. Now, if you have a TV anywhere, it would have been blasted. Here's the thing. This thing about giving your dues, like, what was it? I'll need to get the exact wording. Pledging allegiance to the king. Do you know that all parliamentarians do that anyway? So if you're hearing the pledge to the king or the queen, I've only ever heard it done for the queen. I'm not that old. I have not seen a king in my lifetime. This is it. You do have to pledge allegiance to the king. And we did vote to stay as a nation tied underneath a queen. So, yes, we do have to pledge allegiance to the king. That is entirely true until we are a republic. That is a fact. So Q&A went around and asked a few people some questions. Take a listen and tell me what you think.
Explain to us why you will be pledging allegiance to the king.
Well, I'm a Pom, which I suppose is part of the explanation. But the other thing is that he is a good, caring person. And he admittedly has...
I don't agree with any of that. I don't think King Charles is some amazing guy. I just think that he's the head of state, head of country, and that's it. That's it. I dispute that a lot.
A habit for messing in politics, which is what I think's got the politicians worried. He is also very, very good at using his personality and his high profile for getting things done. And he wants to do the right thing by his people. And by the way, what she was talking about the expense, half of the expense of the coronation is for security. And that's to protect the people as much as the king and the queen consort.
Takes a bit of getting used to.
It does. I still think.
No, look, thank you for your input on that. Did anyone else want to comment on?
So, fun fact that the royal family is largely independent. Yes, they do take money from countries like ours and a few others, and that's what is part of being tied to the queen. But fun fact, they actually make more money than what they receive. So as a GDP revenue, they actually make more money. I don't know why we're handing them money. That's another weird thing about being tied to the Queen, but we actually do hand the royals money.
Pledging allegiance, I'll come to you finally, right in the middle here. Sorry, thank you. Pledging allegiance, is something you're even contemplating?
Yes.
Yes. And why is that?
The system, for all its flaws, does work, and why would we trade the current system for another partisan elected bureaucrat?
But does that mean we should pledge allegiance to the king?
See, no, then this is a very disingenuous question. No, I do not plan to actually do it. Just because I don't believe in that. But I believe in electing people, not by birthright should they just be handed something. That's a us and them sort of scenario, and it's another classism that I don't think should exist. Even though I understand that the royal family is in a way independent, and they do make the country a lot of money. But I do not want to pledge allegiance to the king. If we get a choice to become a republic, that's what I'm going to go for, because I don't believe in this kind of stuff, but that's me. Even though I do listen to a lot of it, here's a fun fact. Old English audiobooks. Yes, yeah. Any members here, you can tease me about that later. That is a fun fact. I do listen to them. It just fascinates me. But no, I'm not going to stand there and be obsessed in the whole royal thing. I've never really discussed them before. But yeah.
Why not? Let's give him a chance to see how he does. I mean, 70 years ago, there wasn't much interest in the Queen, and then she built up a reputation. So why don't we give him a chance and see how he does first?
Well, not in the majority tonight, but we did have a couple of people there who are going to be pledging allegiance. Look, thank you all once again very much for coming along tonight, for your great questions and for the chat after the show as well. Bye for now.
So it turns out if we would have not, it turns out that I don't think there's much as support for the royals anymore. I don't think it's just King Charles. I think it was drilled out a long time ago, and we just didn't have a feel for it. Okay, last story for the evening. Turns out Fox ratings have bottomed out. They are losing 4 to 5 times the amount of viewing from the top-rated Tucker Carlson show. Now they're calling it something else. I never remember names of things. It's always fascinates me where it goes. It just poof, gone. So, where are they going? Turns out Newsmax and OAN have seen an exponential viewing rates. So this happened around when the presidential election happened, and Fox News called Florida for Biden, which rightfully it should have done. But eventually the person was sacked for doing exactly that, telling the viewers the truth. But they panicked and then pardon me, and they ended up firing the person for that. But it got even weirder, and they just started flat out lying even more just to keep their audience. So this will be a sink or swim moment. Do they want to keep pandering and lying to the current audience and get someone as just as awful as Tucker that won't go as far as to tell you that an election was stolen, or do they go another direction and go with integrity? Now, if we know Rupert Murdoch, he doesn't learn from his mistakes. He just makes different versions of it. How do you go from hacking the Queen and a dead little girl's phone to ruining democracy? I've only known Rupert Murdoch to do exactly that. But let me be absolutely clear. Fox News is the absolute epitome of what you don't want to be. I don't know why they're even called A News. Tucker Carlson's show repeatedly, when there was one incident where they went to court and showed that they did not believe with any sound, reasonable person would take seriously what Tucker Carlson said. Why? Because it didn't have to be based in any facts. So it's not new that Tucker Carlson is a lying sack of shit. But do they replace him with the same lying sack of shit, or do they go somewhere better? So let's hear what happened and how in this last video of our evening.
Has now agreed to turn over additional documents to Smartmatic, that's the voting technology company, suing the right-wing network for $2.7 billion over its promotion of Trump's lies about the 2020 presidential election. CNN's Oliver Darcy is digging into all of this for us. Oliver, what are you learning about these documents?
That's right. Well, Fox News agreeing to turn over additional documents on Fox chairman Rupert Murdoch, as well as other top executives as part of Smartmatic's $2.7 billion lawsuit against the right-wing talk channel. Fox lawyers saying in court today that they will be turning these documents over as soon as possible. And this comes after the judge broadened discovery in the case and said that he wanted Fox to turn over additional documents as well, documents related to the 2020 ratings and documents related to the internal fact-checking team that Fox News had in place. This comes after Smartmatic accused Fox or said that they were noticing gaps in discovery process, and so they were asking the judge for these documents. Fox, for its part, they're saying that they've complied fully with the discovery process and that they've turned over more than 30,000 documents already as part of this case. And they're also saying that they believe that they will win in a trial, which is set at this point for early 2025. Wolf.
Oliver, I know you've also been looking at the ratings for Fox's 8 p.m. Eastern hour after Tucker Carlson's dismissal. That was the hour he used to have his show on Fox.
A really astonishing ratings decline after Tucker Carlson was fired from Fox News in the 8 p.m. hour. Wolf, last night in the 8 p.m. hour in the key advertiser coveted 25 to 54 demo, Fox News suffered the lowest ratings it has had, or delivered the lowest ratings it has had since pre-9/11. I mean, that's a really astonishing feat for the network.
So pre-9/11 means that they bolstered a lot of support in doing ridiculous things and lying to their audience big back then. So they've been at this a long time. This isn't new. This is just a new playbook for what they're doing.
Losing Carlson. And what we're also noticing, and this is what set alarm bells off after the 2020 election among Fox executives, is that their competitor, Newsmax, a much smaller competitor, but a competitor nonetheless in the space, they're seeing an incredible surge in the ratings at the same time. So while Fox is dipping, Newsmax is up almost 4 or 5 times the ratings they were posting before Tucker Carlson was fired. And so I imagine that Fox executives are looking at this and they're probably a little unnerved at the moment at what they're seeing. Whether this trend holds up, we'll wait and see. But it's definitely something that people are paying close attention to over at the Avenue of America's headquarters for Fox News.
Yeah.
Okay, so that wraps that up. And that addresses that issue. So let's see if Fox News either remakes itself or goes with the same shit show that it does. Okay, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, and I appreciate everyone's viewing. I hope that if you are watching this live, thank you. Share, like, and subscribe. If you're watching this after the video has aired, please leave a comment. Let me know what you think. And as always, I enjoy your company, so let me know how I can improve this service for you. Thank you. Have a good night. Bye, guys.